This is the eHealth Radio Network, your source for health advice on demand. And now your host, Eric Michaels.
Thanks for joining us once again here on the eHealth Radio Network. This is your host, Eric Michaels. eHealth Radio gives you the most current health information, news, and advice featuring some of the leading innovators in healthcare and wellness who are changing healthcare as we know it. For more eHealth Radio reports, we invite you to visit our main radio channel site at eHealthRadioNetwork.com. Today we're speaking with Sarah Spann, a Digestion Diva. As a holistic nutritionist and wellness coach, Sarah helps people to get back the freedom, energy, and vitality their digestive issues have taken away, and she is most passionate about empowering people to feel at their best physical and emotional health so they can live their lives to the fullest. And Sarah, great to have you with us here on eHealth Radio.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure, and looking forward to hearing from you today, Sarah, and thanks for your time. So for starters, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how this passion to help people suffering from digestive disorders came about?
Yeah, so this is something I'm quite empathetic towards because I have personally had a long history of digestive issues. Ever since I was a teenager, I was having a lot of stomach issues. I was unwell, underweight, tired, a lot of not nice stuff. And it took me several years before I was finally diagnosed with celiac disease. And what I learned from that was that it's difficult to find out what the cause is of your digestive problem. And then the second thing I learned about that is just because you have a diagnosis, there's actually a lot more work to do in order to actually heal your gut. And it's not only diet that plays a role in that, but your emotional health as well. So now I'm really passionate about helping people to overcome their digestive issues using both their diet and their looking after their emotional health.
Well, certainly makes sense where the inspiration and motivation came from, and the passion to help others that suffer from what you have suffered from in the past. So tell us, why are we seeing such an increase in rates of digestive disorders today?
Yeah, well, I mean, the statistics are certainly pretty big. It's about 25% of the population in Australia and in the United States has irritable bowel syndrome. We're seeing an increase in things like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, and it's also happening at younger and younger ages, so in young children. And it's three things that are really driving this. The first is our Western diet. So our diet is quite high in sugar, fat, and salt, and quite low in fiber. And what this does is it actually populates the pathogens and the unfavorable damaging sort of bacteria in the gut, and not having enough fiber in the gut starves your good bacteria. So you've got this imbalance where you've got too much inflammation going on in the gut, and that's a real key driver of any digestive problem. And actually, we're also seeing it's a real driver of other body problems and chronic disease and things like that. So that's the first sort of issue. The second driver is our modern lifestyle. So we've got this fast-paced lifestyle. There's more demands, there's more pressure, there's more urgency. We're seeing a rise in mental health issues as well. And stress is actually a really huge disruptor of the gut microbiome, which I'll talk about more in a minute. But it really impacts the balance of gut bacteria as well, and it really drives inflammation in the gut. So that's another big problem that we've got. And then the third driver of the problems is our environment. So we're living in a world with a lot more environmental toxins, a lot more pesticide use, artificial colors, flavors, alcohol, antibiotics, all sorts of things like that, plastics, BPA in plastics, chemicals in our skincare products like parabens. These, we know that these actually have an impact on the gut microbiome as well. In terms of killing off the good bacteria and causing this imbalance where you've got more of the pathogens and inflammatory bacteria taking over. So we're at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to our diet, the way we live, and the world we live in. And that's why we're seeing that the amount of good bacteria that we have in our guts is actually really shrinking, and the level of bad bacteria is growing.
Certainly do appreciate your thoughts and input here in all regards. They're most helpful. Now, also, why are there so many different opinions, would you say, when it comes to diet, and how do people know really what's right for them?
Yeah, so the thing with diet is it's very individual. So we've all got different genetics. We've come from different backgrounds. We've got different levels of stress resilience. We're all eating our food differently. Some people eat it quickly. Some people chew it. Some people eat in a rush while they're on the run. Others will sit down for a meal. And all of these things actually impact what happens to the food when it goes in your body. So your diet depends on what's happening in your gut at that time, and it will change as your gut changes. And just because something works for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Again, because we're all different and we're all at different stages. So that's why, someone will try a diet like, let's say paleo, for example, and then they'll see a huge improvement on it, and they'll recommend it to other people, but someone else might have a particular genetic makeup or something. They don't agree with a certain food on the diet, or they do better off with a different style of diet, and so it doesn't work as well for them. So it's actually a little bit confusing because it really depends on the person, but that's why there's so many different opinions, because there's so many different people that have tried different things.
Certainly appreciate your joining us here to bring focus to these issues today. We are with Sarah Spann, a Digestion Diva, holistic nutritionist and wellness coach, and she's joined us here today on eHealth Radio's Nutrition and Health News channels, a part of the eHealth Radio Network. Now, taking this even further, what is the gut-brain connection, and how does that impact our gut health?
Yeah, so this is quite interesting. There's been a huge rise in the research of the link between the gut and the brain. So the main sort of connection between the two is that so your brain is part of the central nervous system, and your gut is part of what's called the enteric nervous system. So your gut actually has its own nervous system, and the two systems communicate with each other through what's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a really long nerve that stems from the brain, and it's connected to several parts of the gut. And essentially, they're always picking up messages from each other. They're always listening to each other. They know what's going on in one and the other. So that's a big reason why, when you might be nervous about something, or a stressful event just happens, you can feel like butterflies in your stomach or a sinking sensation. That's essentially your gut reacting to the message it's receiving from the brain. Now, in terms of how this impacts digestion, it comes back to the flight or fight response, which happens when the body feels like there's a threat. So when the brain receives like a stressful thought, or you have a stressful feeling like negative emotions, or worried about your to-do list, or worried about an upcoming trip or something like that, this activates the sympathetic nervous system in the body, and this is what's called the flight or fight response. And essentially the purpose of this response is to get your body out of physical danger. That's how we're still hardwired. The body doesn't really know that most of our danger is mental now. So you get this release of cortisol and adrenaline in your blood, but importantly, in terms of digestion, your blood is drawn away from your digestive tract. Essentially, the response shuts off your digestion, because right now your life's in danger and you don't need to be eating to save your life. And then the other thing that happens is your body actually wants to get rid of any food in you to make you lighter. So that's why sometimes you can feel nauseous or even throw up. Sometimes that's why you might need to run to the bathroom, because of this increase in adrenaline in your system. So the main 2 points about that is that firstly, it shuts off your digestion, which impairs absorption of nutrients, and then what happens is the food particles actually sit in the colon and ferment instead of being absorbed. And this is a big reason that you get those things like bloating and gas and other tummy upsets. The biggest reason is because you're not absorbing your food properly. So yeah, that's kind of the key thing that happens there. And then also, triggers symptoms that other way, like nausea and the need to urgently run to the bathroom to get the food out of your body so that you're lighter.
Interesting information, and it certainly does make sense as well. How do we know if stress is affecting our digestion?
Yeah, so I think the best way to do this is to start to become aware of what's happening in your life and how you're feeling when your symptoms happen. So to give you an example, I was speaking with a client today, actually, who she was really sick the other day, sick to her stomach, and she was really unwell, but nothing had changed in her diet. She hadn't done anything differently. However, she had dropped her kids off at the airport, and she was really worried because they were traveling without her, and she was really worried, and there was some other things going on in that area. So for her, it was that stress that really caused the upset in her stomach. So if you can start to become aware of what's happening in your life and how you're feeling when your digestive issues happen, not just what you eat, then, that'll tell you whether stress is influencing what's happening in your gut.
Sarah, I'm sure we have listeners tuning in today that has a digestive issue. Where should they start in treating this situation?
Yeah, sure, because it can be really confusing. Definitely there's a lot of conflicting information, and there's new research coming out all the time. So if you're just getting started, what I always say is to go back to basics. Make sure you're nourishing your body with, fresh whole foods. Pay attention to how you're eating. Make sure you're chewing your food and try and eat in a relaxed environment as much as possible to activate your digestion. And then also start to notice what stress means to you and what sort of things in your life are causing you stress, and start to build awareness around that. And then the other really important thing is to look at your environment. Look at how many, for example, like what's in your personal care products, what's in your home cleaning products, whether you can choose organic more often, things like that. That'll make a real big difference as well.
Sarah, again, we really appreciate your joining us on the program and for what you do in the space and for your insight and input here in all regards per your expertise. In conclusion, any closing thoughts, a takeaway, a tip, anything else you'd like to share as we conclude today?
I did want to mention one tip. A really good way to think of your gut microbiome is think of it like a garden. So in this garden, you've got all sorts of plants, flowers, and weeds in there, and this keeps your whole ecosystem in a delicate balance. So if too many of the flowers die and the weeds take over, you've obviously got quite an unhealthy garden, and this is what drives health issues in the body and digestive problems. So it's important to know that you do have the power to become the gardener of your gut, so to speak, by doing the things I mentioned before, fertilizing your flowers with fresh plant-based food and kind thoughts, and keeping them healthy and flourishing by limiting the toxic sort of substances I was talking about, preservatives, antibiotics, unless they're necessary. Sometimes they are, which is fine, but just, use them only as needed. And, limiting alcohol, fatty foods, refined and processed foods. And, your gut's the product of its environment. So create a good one and it will thrive.
Certainly do appreciate those concluding remarks, Sarah, and again, for all the information shared. I'm sure listeners want to know how they can get more information on yourself, your services, and any other details. Where's the best place online to get further information and a way to be in touch as well?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me at my website, which is Sarah Spann, SarahSpann.net. On my website, you can book in a complimentary connection call with me if you'd like to learn more about what I do. There's also a download that I have, the Ultimate Gut Health Blueprint, just to help get you started, and that's for free. So you can download that from my website. Also on Facebook, sarahspann.nutritionist, and Instagram as The Real Sarah Spann.
Fantastic. Again, Sarah, all the best, and thanks so much for joining us here today on eHealth Radio. Certainly was our pleasure.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me. It's been really good.
You bet it has, and I look forward to our next conversation as well. Again, we've been speaking with Sarah Spann, a Digestion Diva, holistic nutritionist and wellness coach. Sarah helps people to get back the freedom, energy, and vitality their digestive issues has taken away, and she is most passionate about empowering people to feel at their best physical and emotional health so they can live their lives to the fullest. And for further details and for contact, visit sarahspann.net. And again, this has been your host, Eric Michaels, and we do thank you for your continued support of the eHealth Radio Network. Join us again soon for another episode that will help further expand your knowledge on those things that are important to your health and wellness. For more eHealth radio reports, we invite you to visit our main radio channel site at eHealthRadioNetwork.com. And as always, we do thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the eHealth Radio Network. For more information or to subscribe to this podcast, visit eHealthRadioNetwork.com.